Hello, everyone. My name is Venerable. Hello, everyone. My name is Venerable Wade Buripanyo here at Empty Cloud Monastery with Bante J for the regular Friday night monk chat. Monk chat is an opportunity for those of you joining us remotely to type in questions for us about any topic related to Buddhism, as well as, of course, for the yogis who are here at the monastery as well. There's no formal talk tonight. It looks like we have a number of people sending in their greetings with Anjalis and hellos. Ask Bante J if it's convenient to maybe. They're scrolling in. I'm not sure if any are questions, but we have a number of hellos.
Not yet.
Okay.
Hello, Rick, Julie, Chad, Karuna, Kumu, Maria, Amaranta.
Great. The usual suspects.
Yes.
We're coming up with stumpers as we speak, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. I'd like to take a moment to Anumotana Gayatri, one of our regular live stream participants who came to the monastery tonight and rescued a layperson who went out of the monastery to get some dana, some groceries for the monastery on foot, and got caught in a thunderstorm, a sudden thunderstorm. Gayatri went out to his rescue in her car to pick him up, for which he was very grateful. And so, Anumotana, we rejoice in your good deed, Gayatri, and sharing merit with you as well.
Okay. Oh, Louisa and Daniel. No questions so far, although it is still early. It's only a couple of minutes in. People are still rambling in.
But I have a question. Is that okay?
Sure.
Would you give an outline of Panya, Sila, and Samadhi?
Wow.
That's like a Dhamma talk.
Yes. That's a big question. Okay. Sure, an outline of Panya, Sila, and Samadhi. Sure, and you've listed them in interesting order because oftentimes I think more commonly they're listed in the order of Sila, Samadhi, and Panya. But you of course, Drew, I think you know that the Buddha, according to the sutras, says in the Noble Eightfold Path, right view comes first, and it is the forerunner of all good qualities, just as the first rays of dawn foretell the rising of the sun. And so we have in the Noble Eightfold Path these three divisions, Panya, Sila, and Samadhi. So Panya is represented by right view and right thought, Samma Ditti and Samma Sankappa. And then so Sila then is represented by right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Oh, excuse me. I missed one, I think. Right effort, right speech. No, right effort is after. Okay. This is good to put me through my paces and see if I remember these. So it's right action, right speech, right action, and right livelihood form the aggregate of Sila in the Noble Eightfold Path. And then we have right effort, right mindfulness, and right samadhi, right concentration as the samadhi aggregate or the concentration aggregate of the Noble Eightfold Path. So that's the Panya, Sila, and Samadhi.
All right. Interesting question right off the bat. Bantes, can you share some reflections on transitioning from the first to the second jhana? Thank you.
Any suggestions?
Any reflections. Or on, I guess, or suggestions, whatever.
Well, the transition from the first to the second jhana, the key difference is the absence of vitaka vichara, which means the touching and rubbing of the object, meaning the initial application, the sustained application of the mind to the meditation object. So whereas the first jhana has these factors, vitaka and vichara, the second jhana does not. The difference is not that the application of the mind to the object has been lost, but rather that the meditator no longer has to apply effort to keep the mind on the object, because it is well settled on the object. Having experienced the rising of rapture, of piti, that is, in sukha, in the jhanas, it's well pleased and feeling very good in this space of samadhi. And so that's, I think, one thing that can happen is that when someone goes into the first jhana and starts experiencing these kinds of things, such as piti and sukha, rapture and ease. It can be quite a remarkable experience. And so it's common for meditators to think, wow, my meditation is really taking off, or something like this, or what is happening? I can't believe what's happening. And with these kinds of reactions and these kinds of thinking, lose track of the object. And so the first attempts at going into the first jhana, you can kind of be overturned and lose it. And then so you have to approach again, and you keep trying. And as you try a few more times, it becomes more natural, and then you don't have such a strong reaction to it. And you can settle into the experience of the first jhana and learn to manipulate things like piti and sukha and so on as you're passing into the second jhana. So there's this aspect of kind of settling into the second jhana is more kind of like it's become more natural to be in samadhi after some practice.
Mm-hmm. Hello, Gregory, Metika. Daniel has a question. I've noticed when I do walking meditation that facing one direction on the walking path, I am more mindful than the other. Light also has an effect. Is this useful to pay attention to? What can I learn? This is interesting. Well, I'd like a clarifying question. Is it the coming back, going forward and then coming back, and on the way back, it's harder to be more mindful. What I would say, if this is the case, that you should treat each row, each time you walk from one to the other, that's one. You stop, you turn around, take a little time to come back to full mindfulness, then come back. Right. So if you maintain your mindfulness, you can just keep going back and forth. But if you lose your mindfulness during one of the laps, you just stop. Just take as long as you need, even a minute or 2 minutes. Follow the breath, or just stand there and reestablish mindfulness on the feet, and then you just go again. If this is not the case, then really, just like when you're sitting, there's all kinds of interesting experiences that happen. There's all kinds of, little idiosyncrasies, right? That you might have, that others might not. They might have different idiosyncrasies. And these are all things to investigate on the practice, right? When you are doing your walking meditation, if you notice that at a certain part of the walking meditation at a certain time, etc., that you are losing your mindfulness, well, investigate that. What is the cause and condition for that, for that awareness, for that focus to be lost? To pay attention to that and see where it leads you. Light also has an effect. I don't know what you mean by light. Are you meditating in the dark in your house, or are you going outside? There's a variety of different things that could be said about that. But when you're walking meditating, unlike when, especially like new meditators, they get really agitated because they're always distracted by everything. So they try to find some kind of soundproof dark room to go sit and follow the breath in so that nothing distracts them, right? Or you can't do that when you're walking meditating, especially if you're doing it outside, right? You are in the thick of it. This is why the Buddha says that the samadhi gained when doing walking meditation is strong and durable, right? Because you've done that in the middle of everything. Ambulance is going by, the school bell on the other side of the road. These are all when I used to do walking meditation at my office at work. All kinds of things. People coming into work when I would meditate in the morning before work. All these are happening. This is normal. So that is part of the practice. Just like when you sit and you follow your breath and you get distracted away and you come back. Right? You get distracted away from something, you come back to your feet. The same process over and over again. Oh, he has just a clarification. I do walking meditation in a hallway that is open and well lit. on one end and dark on the other. My mental experience changes significantly between these two. Oh yeah. Well, you can investigate that. That's interesting. Do you have anything to add to that, Tom?
Maybe see what happens if you can hang a curtain over the well lit end, or turn on a light in the dark end. See how it affects your meditation. These things can, while we want to try to learn to be able to meditate kind of independent of conditions, so we can meditate in any kind of circumstances. Also, if it can be helpful sometimes to manipulate the conditions as well, and so it's kind of an art, and we have to see where we can make changes and where we're just being kind of nitpicking, So it's something for each individual to work out themselves. It's interesting. There is a story from the Ajahn Mun tradition that Ajahn Mun himself told his disciples that when they're walking on their walking meditation paths outside, their walking meditation paths should run from east to west, or close to east to west, but not north south, so that. And actually, it's been lost to the tradition why. But he said that it was significant. And so I heard one theory that sounded very plausible to me from my own practice, which is that if the sun is on one side of you while walking in one direction, and then on the other side while walking the other direction, then it's distracting. I thought actually this is. I think it can be sometimes, and so it's for each individual to investigate, I guess. And so you can pay attention to this and see how it affects your meditation if you were to manipulate the light conditions, I guess. But in the end, it's up to us to work on it in the heart, so we can meditate anywhere in any conditions.
Sorry. The next question is about Anapanasati, and I think they might be misunderstanding something, so I just wanted to actually go to it. Okay, yeah. Okay, that's what I thought. In the practice of Anapanasati at step 8, we stop volitional thoughts. No, you don't. That's not what this is about. That's the first problem. That's the first misunderstanding. But then later, we intentionally direct the mind to impermanence. Is the stopping of volitional thoughts only bring the mind to samadhi before then actively contemplating later on? So the 8th step of Anapanasati is tranquilizing the mental formations. This does not mean that you are intentionally stopping thought or anything like that. What this means is that as your body before you has been tranquilized, has become calm, the mind becomes calm. Doesn't mean that you stop thinking. There's lots of chatter that will start to, be silenced, but you are still able to do things like, as you say, investigate in the impermanence, right? Investigate fading away, investigate cessation, etc. So that's the difference. I would not think of that as we are stopping our thought in that way. Anything on your end, Tom?
Well, I think you said it right. The kind of the one aspect of the breath meditation is that the focus is really on the breath, and being mindful of the breath in such a way that the mind, first the body, and then the mind becomes calmer. I think the idea of the idea of like focusing on trying to stop thinking would probably be counterproductive to that, if that were really your main focus. Sometimes we have thoughts while we're trying to meditate on the breath, and we're being distracted by them. We might pay attention to them in a way that's mindful, in trying mindful of letting go of them and returning to the breath as the object. So we do pay some attention to our thinking, and more from the point of view of, is it distracting us from a meditation object, and therefore standing in the way of us making the mind calm. And then yes, once the mind becomes very calm, and then we start. If we experience samadhi, then it's the ideal place to then start focusing on impermanence. So, yeah.
So Ellie has a question. It's very in line with what we've been discussing at Empty Cloud the last couple of days.
Oh, yeah.
What are teachings about hospice care, please? There's a lot of different aspects to this. There's the aspect of you going into hospice care, and whether at home or a place. There's the aspect of putting somebody else in a hospice care, and there's the aspect of helping somebody who's in hospice. So there's a lot of different avenues that you can go here with this. This is really, I guess, about, hospice is basically somebody at end of life, right? So how do you care for somebody at the end of life? There's a wide variety of advice that can come from this. The Buddha, doesn't speak directly per se about this, but if you're taking care of somebody who's going towards the end of their life, this is a wonderful opportunity for you to practice patience, practice being able to be with other people suffering, which is something that a lot of us don't like to do. We have no patience for this. We don't like to have to observe people to suffer. So it's a very good process for both the person providing the caregiving and the person who's going through the suffering can have somebody who can be there for them in certain ways. So.
I wonder if I might add some really practical tips about hospice care. Again, we don't know if you're talking about perhaps yourself entering hospice care or how to help out someone who's going to hospice care or something like this. But based on a personal experience, I remember when another family member was going into hospice care, and there's some confusion in the family because the family is multiple generations, and so some family members had no experience with what hospice care was, and so they were told things like the family member is going into hospice care. They didn't realize some of the other family members didn't realize that what this really meant, that they were very close to the end of life. They wouldn't be receiving medicines to kind of cure the health problems that they have, but rather they'd be receiving, for example, pain medication, this kind of thing. And it could be helpful to make sure that people who care about the person who's going to hospice care understand exactly what it means. What is hospice care, and what is really being said about the person's condition? I think something else that came up in this kind of a situation was the prognosis was given from one family member to another that they don't have long, and this is it's a very vague term. So the way some family members understood it was, well, maybe they have 3 months to 6 months or something like this, but actually what was meant was within a day in this particular circumstance. And so this led to quite a big misunderstanding and then a scramble and quite a bit of confusion about what was really going on. And so I think in these kinds of circumstances, even though it's difficult to talk about these kinds of things, it's good to be very explicit so people feel like they're well informed and can make decisions that they'll feel good about later on. I mentioned on the panel last night, Sangha panel, regarding death, the topic of death, that I myself have read a bit about pain medication. From what I've read, I remember reading a book by a medical school professor 3 or 4 years ago who specialized in pain. And he said that pain medications actually, over time, can increase pain, or they usually do, he was saying, because of the effect that they have on the nervous system. Now, so if there has been a history of using pain medications and someone has to go on to narcotic medications, my understanding is narcotics, and from what I've seen, can have quite an intoxicating effect one way or another on the patient, quite affect their mental states. And so personally, I have questions and concerns about how good that is to be in a state of mind like that when passing away, considering from the Buddhist point of view, the idea of rebirth, for example. This is something maybe I offer for thought, as I'm not sure exactly what to do about it, but yeah. Okay, some tips. Looks like Drew, did you?
No, I don't think actually spoke about that matter.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you could explain more. What he said is his father was put on morphine when he was at his end of life,
Mhm.
and he was having so many terrifying visions because he was in the war. And Ajahn Dip was telling the monks there, if you're at the end of your life, if you can, do your best not to take any medication.
Mhm.
Because if you have all these visions,
Mhm.
it'd be hard to have a good rebirth.
Right. That's actually my thank you for sharing that. That's actually kind of my feeling is that that if you're intoxicated in one way or another, having some kind of strange mental experiences because of the medications you're taking, it'll be a negative impact for your rebirth. And if we can, well, I think for a lot of people, it'd be quite difficult to manage to deal with some very painful conditions at the end of life without the medications. I think that it's to our advantage to try, if we can, to develop the meditation skills, the mental skills, to be able to endure and to work with pain so that we can die mindfully. So that's something I can offer for thought. Yeah. Thank you, Drew.
So Julie has a question. Dear Venerables, when meditating, is there a danger we can connect with beings of other realms? Can you clarify how to know if what we see is another realm or if it's mind created? I've never had any experiences with this kind of stuff in meditation. So do you have any?
Well, okay, this is quite an interesting topic. I think one thing is that I'd like to say, is there a danger that we connect with beings of other realms? And one teaching on this I can offer up front is the teaching that regardless, that the biggest danger is not meditating. And so we want to try and focus on, well, if we do our meditation, we're doing something very skillful, something that's very good karma. And this will be a great protection for us going forward. And so don't let any concerns about this kind of thing deflect you from doing meditation. I think these kinds of meditations, these kinds of questions, rather, it's very good to develop a relationship. If you think you may be getting into something like this, develop a relationship with a very experienced meditation master, so that he can get to know what's from you, what's happening in your meditation over time, and get a sense for what might be real and what might be imagination, as you're saying. It's a very good question because it is a quite common issue. And then get some guidance from someone you trust that you can work with on an ongoing basis with regular contact and guidance. Perhaps that's the best kind of thing to say in a form like this, I think, that I can think of anyway.
When people first started asking me questions, I would get questions like this, like, what do you do if you see astral visitors and all these things? I'm like, wow, my meditation is boring. All I do is try to follow the breath and suffer. Like, I don't get all this kind of interesting things that some people get. I don't know.
One thing is that all these kinds of experiences, whether they're imaginary or whether they're real, they're actually they can be considered to some extent as distractions from a meditation, and we can work with them as we would other kinds of distractions, whether they're visual distractions or thought distractions or sound distractions. However, your meditation instructor might guide you in dealing with those kinds of distractions. You deal with the distractions in the same way. Another way of dealing with it is if you're at a stage where the mind is very calm and you're having this kind of an experience, then you can deal with it as just any other kind of sensory experience to be investigated with vipassana. So, well, it's see the impermanence in the changing sensory experience, for example, just like you would with any other kind of vision you might be having in your head of the past, for example, or something like this. It's additional is my ideas to offer in a general sense.
All right. Wasabi, dear Venerables, when sitting, I have just making sure that our monastery cat does not destroy the live stream like he did 2 weeks ago by taking out the wires, the plugs. When sitting, I have a good posture that doesn't cut off blood flow to my legs, but my back hurts. Then you don't have good posture. Is this something to try and correct, or is it normal in the beginning? So what's going on is, you can spend decades like working with your posture and observing all these things. And yeah, that's good. You found a posture that your legs don't get, the blood doesn't get cut off, but you have to work on your back. What's going on with your back, right? This is the whole of your posture works together, right? The whole body. I like to talk about the body being like a house, right? The lower body's the foundation. And if you're doing it right, ideally, your upper body is just resting comfortably, right? Your spine is just without being engaged. So what's probably happening is your spine is engaged. It's, leaning, slouching here, there. And when you meditate over time, yeah, that's going to cause back pain. So 2 aspects. It seems like, so you're new. 2 aspects I would say. A, do some abdominal exercises, strengthen your core, because that is an aspect of it. Right? I remember doing like really long meditation retreats, and after the 3rd day, my abs just were not strong enough to keep me up. Like it was just like trying to, building up your core is going to be helpful in that. And observing your posture, really investigating your posture. If you're going to sit for a half hour for an hour, make half that time investigating your posture. Really get to know it, really understand it. And then as you do that, you'll be able to sit longer with less pain, less suffering, with better posture, better breathing, etc.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So
I've spent lots and lots of years, because of my breathing issues and my troubles with sitting. I spent lots and lots of years working on my posture, and even now it's still not all that great. Ellie is saying a receiver of care related to the hospice.
Oh, okay, sure. Hopefully some of those ideas were very helpful.
Kim says, as a beginner, I find silent mantras as helpful to stop mind chatter. Is this merely a crutch?
No, I don't think so. Merely a crutch. I would say, if you find that it helps you to make the mind calm, then it's good. As long as it's a wholesome kind of mantra or something. It's I don't see any reason to think negatively about it. Even very advanced meditators will use mantras of one kind or other. I had a very good experience myself using. I'm not sure it would be called a mantra actually, but I have used loving kindness mantras, for example. This is things I would say to myself over and over again. Found it very productive. Sometimes I would even chant certain loving kindness chants back to back over and over again for long periods of time, like the Karniya Metta Sutta, for example, and other chants like this. So very long mantras, you might say in a way, or very short mantras. The lineage of Ajahn Mun in the West, known as the Thai Forest tradition, and it's quite common throughout Thai Buddhism to use a kind of mantra, a meditation word of Buddho, Dhammo, or Sangho. Buddho being the most popular. Really focusing on that. So even to the extent of, if just focusing on the word itself, just saying Buddho over and over again very quickly in the mind. Buddho, 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 Buddho. Very, very, very quickly to keep the mind from shooting off to something else. And this can seem quite challenging at first, but I think that if we try for like 60 seconds or 90 seconds or 2 minutes to do this, just commit to that little bit of time, we can see quite an effect actually and start to get some benefit from it. Or Buddho, Dhammo, or Sangho joined with something like breath meditation. So that if we were doing breath meditation, we might say Bud on the in-breath and To on the out-breath. Buddho, Buddho, to help us keep the mind with the breath. kind of like we might use counting the breath to help keep the mind with the breath. So I think if you're finding it's working, I mean, the test for a meditation method is if it's helping you to make the mind calm, and if you have a meditation instructor who's guiding you in this way, and they seem like they're competent and so on, that's a good test right there. That it's going well for you.
Chad coming in with the complicated questions today. What is the difference between rapture, joy, and gladdening the mind? So why don't we clarify? So this is why we need to be anchored in Pali.
Okay.
Well, let's see. Let's connect with the Pali, Tom. What do you think? Rapture, that's an easy one. That's piti, right? Okay,
probably right. Yeah.
Joy, I think this is sukha.
Yeah.
Because I think sometimes it's translated as joy. I don't think that's the best translation for it. But in gladdening the mind, pamoja, you think?
That's what,
Yeah.
That's my guess. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because each of these terms can be translated in many different ways. This helps us key it to what are you talking? These could be from where are these from? Would these be from the jhanas or from the Anapanasati Sutta again? I don't think sukha is explicitly mentioned in the Anapanasati Sutta, but I may be mistaken. I forget.
I don't think so.
But I think gladdening the mind is.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't remember about sukha, but piti and sukha are factors of the first jhana, and sukha also of the second jhana. And gladdening the mind, I think we find in the Anapanasati Sutta, but not in the standard list of factors of the jhanas.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's interesting the order here. Okay, so all right. So if we go into what is the difference between them, so gladdening the mind, experiencing pamoja, is actually what we would typically call happiness or being happy. Sukha is often translated in this way, but in this most general sense, it simply means pleasure. Happiness, in a common kind of way, is a very low form of pleasure. Even though many of us aspire to experience happiness in our everyday lives, the spiritual pleasures that are available through spiritual practice are actually much higher. And I think this is an important distinction. And happiness, interestingly, is a condition for a rapture, piti. But in the Anapanasati Sutta, it's listed after, because mastering gladdening the mind actually comes later than mastering piti. This is quite an interesting quirk in meditation practice. Sukha, we're guessing that's the translation of the joys or translation of sukha, is actually a feeling of bodily ease in the jhanas. So a very specific meaning in this context of the jhanas. There we go. Maybe I can offer that. Rapture is piti, which is kind of a thrilling pseudo-physical experience. Apparently, according to the Digha Nikaya, one of the sutras in the Digha Nikaya, I think it is initiated by the heart, but it happens in what is considered like the life force, the energies of the body. As the Buddha makes reference to piti when talking to someone about how he said, because of the experience of piti, you can't say that the life force is the same as the body, or that the life force is different from the body. There's this relationship between the mind and the body and the life force, I think. But this is very thrilling thing that's described in the, for example, the Samanyapala Sutta, in a very graphic way, with the simile of an uprising. What is it, like what is it, underground spring that rises up? That's not quite the right word, but water rising up from underground through other water, very bubbly, and it's very, very graphic simile of what it feels like to be experiencing piti, welling up within you, quite a thrilling experience. Whereas sukha is a feeling of ease in the body, and gladdening, as I said before, was happiness. There you go. Some ideas.
Did you say that pamoja is coming before piti, or was it the reverse?
It's interesting. I wonder if you've ever. I'm sure you've seen. What I'm referring to is the paticca. Let's see. So we have an expression of the paticca samuppada in the suttas. Then it talks about once you get to suffering, then suffering can be a condition for faith arising. Mm-hmm. And I believe it's in this series where we see pamoja indicated as a condition for piti.
Well, I think that makes sense, because my understanding of pamoja, the gladdening of the mind is becoming gladdened because it is freed from like the hindrances and things like that. So that would make sense that would be kind of like the step, then, piti arising and things like that. So, yeah.
But it's listed, when I listed it, it's talked about it being after. It's in the Anapanasati Sutta, as I recall, it's listed after as a later step.
Mm.
The reason being that you, to master making the mind happy, you can do after you've already learned to have piti. The difference between simply experiencing it and initiating it intentionally. Okay, so that's it. And then you can use that as a platform. If you can initiate gladness intentionally in your meditation, then you can create that condition for piti to arise. You see what I mean? Okay.
And this is also why it's great to go to the Pali, because in English, it sounds like it's all synonymous words: rapture, joy, gladdening the mind. But in the Pali, it's different. Yeah.
There are two sutras in the Samyutta Nikaya. Samyutta Nikaya says, when a bhikkhu or bhikkhuni is walking and their body becomes agitated, or they experience bodily or mental fevers, at that time they should give attention to some inspiring idea to gladden the mind. And then that arises peak need, and they can go back into concentration.
It may sound like a bit of a contradiction, saying on the one hand that gladdening the mind, or gladness, is a condition for piti, but yet it gets you learn to master it later. I think that one of the ideas is that actually this ability to gladden the mind is not a necessary condition for piti. That you can experience piti without having gladdened the mind first, but it's a very good proximate condition for it, so it helps. Okay. Make that distinction also.
All right. What will happen right after death in Theravada tradition and belief? So in traditional Theravada doctrine, you are instantly reborn. In other traditions, this is not necessarily the case. And also in the suttas, in the early Buddhist texts, there are some suttas that hint at the possibility that this is also not the case. But it's still all kind of up in the air. But yeah, in traditional Theravadan doctrine, you're instantly reborn.
Amy, you have a question on this? Yeah, okay.
This is about the Parinibbana Sutta that we went over this week. After the life force left the Buddha, he's still talking to Ananda, saying, like, I gave you hints how to, like, if someone is enlightened, they can live to be an eon, and I'm only 80. And I gave you hints. 3 times. It was really confusing because it seemed like, in common parlance, like having the life force leave you is when you die, yet he's still chatting away.
But it didn't leave him. He just renounced it. He basically think about the Buddha renouncing the life force as somebody, basically kind of accepting, I've done all the treatment. I only have a couple more months to live. I'm just going to stop it. There's no use in keep going on. Right. So I would think about it in that way. The Buddha is allowing himself to, instead of trying to keep his bag of bones together, he's allowing it to go its natural course and to end. That's right. He's letting go of the life force. The life force thing is very complicated and kind of a little, I've heard multiple monastics kind of talk about it, but it's not very clear, at least in my investigation of it. It really seems like it's kind of, I'm sure in the commentaries they probably talk a lot about it, but I don't know about that. But is there anything from your tradition, Tan, that you know about the life force?
No, they never talk about it.
Yeah.
At least I never had any contact with anyone talking about it. Yeah. I'm curious about it too. So.
Yeah, I mean, it could very well be that the Buddha, basically probably would have passed on before, and he was keeping himself around. So, and then, he decided, then not being asked to stay, he didn't stay.
Yeah,
So-
earlier in the sutta, after he ate the pig, and he wanted the rest of it buried.
Mm-hmm.
He was very ill, but he summoned some life force maybe, and he got better so that he could make that one another stop.
Yeah, he mindfully endured, I believe. I'm not. I don't remember off the top of my head, but yeah.
There's just one idea that's related to it. I wonder if this might be of interest. We had questions before about incorruptibility from the idea of corpses not decaying after one's passed on. And that they say, the lore about that is they say that the meditator is made a determination. When I die, my corpse will not decay. And so I wonder if it's something like that, like in advance, because the Buddha says in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, renounce the life force and I'll pass away in 3 months. That it was so that with the determination to renounce the life force, maybe he put a date on it. So it's just an idea. That's it. So.
All right. So Brian has a couple. That's one big question, I guess, but it's some explanation. I experienced in meditation the impermanence of consciousness as it flicker rapidly through the 6 senses a few weeks ago. I do breath and full body awareness for meditation. Any advice for my meditation? What to do next? Should I continue with this meditation method? I've also been keeping the 5 precepts as best as I can.
So I'll do keeping the 5 precepts to start. What would you say, Bhante?
Well, the Buddha says that the breath can take you all the way to awakening. So you just keep following the breath. Anapanasati and Satipatthana, if you do both those practices, that is what basically, in many ways, all you need, at least for the major meditative practices. There's lots of other things like contemplations and metta and things like that. But in terms of, you're following your breath, you're practicing Anapanasati, good, keep doing that. You don't stop. Even after you can see in the suttas, even after the Buddha and the disciples are awakened, they're still practicing it. Because they could get into jhanas and deep states, and it's like a very calm abiding. So you keep following the breath, keep doing your full body awareness. That's fine. That's what I would say is to keep going, keep practicing. You experience impermanence. That's okay. You want to keep experiencing impermanence in all experiences, in all aspects. So keep following your breath and keep letting it help you to see impermanence. Anything, Tom?
Oh, no. Okay. So I do.
Karuna has a question. Do you have thoughts on the significance of the story of Ananda's plea? Like, why is the onus only on Ananda to ask? Why does it have to be a hint? Was it an object lesson? I don't think I've ever read or heard a monastic go deep on this like this. It's an interesting question, though. It's a very thought-provoking question.
I think one thing we find in the culture of monasticism is that it's considered the polite course for monastics to not impose themselves either on the laity or on the rest of the monastic community. And so having lived a full life by common human standards with a human body, I wonder if the Buddha with this was, he didn't want to. He was coming from the point of view that no one should what's the right word? Presuppose. That's not the right word I'm looking for. Presuppose that other people would want to have them there. And that's quite an example. The Buddha himself, by our religious standards, the very highest, wouldn't just simply assume, that other people wanted to have him around, but rather he would come by invitation. if people wanted him to be around, he would they would invite him. And so it's quite like that in monastic culture. Also, we don't just, the monks just don't show up in an area and say, build us a monastery or something like this. Or when we go on an alms round with our bowls, we walk by, we might stand silently or something like this, but we don't go up to people and ask them for food and assume that people want to practice generosity or something like this. And so it's by invitation. You see this in the culture in Thailand a bit. For example, when we go on an alms round, if a layperson wants to put food in our bowls, they'll say, "We invite you, Ajahn, be teacher, or something like this, or venerable. We invite you. Please receive alms." We wouldn't make the assumption that they want to give. That's just an idea I have. But I think the Buddha, he might have hinted because nobody would actually realize that he could stay around. So this was a middle way that letting them know that he could stay around. And so they had the option to invite him or not. Apparently in this case it was Ananda's personal opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. And one thing that should be understood, you don't see it in the Mahaparinibbana Sutta. You see the Buddha's talking about kind of like basically like keeping this bag of bones going. But you see, like there's a sutta, it's called aging, where the Buddha is warming his bones by the last rays of the dying sun. And Ananda says, "Buddha, it's amazing. It's wonderful. Before your skin was so radiant. Now it's so pale and wrinkly." And so like you see, like the Buddha is, we think that the Buddha is like 80 and he's just like this, like, 30-year-old, like a statue or something. Like, no, he was an old man. He was literally keeping it all together. And to be honest, his job was done. Not only his job to become awakened, but also his job to set up the fourfold assembly, right? The laymen, laywomen, bhikkhus and bhikkhunis, to keep the Dhamma going. His job was done. How much longer does he need to stick around? Just to be like venerated, just to kind of be, maybe, and, sometimes there's also, when you build something, sometimes there's the wisdom of knowing, I think now I need to bow out. Now is the time. They're going to have to handle this, So I don't know. It's an interesting. I like these kind of questions, especially ones that I've never really contemplated before. So, but Karuna says they ask because it makes her sad that they blame Ananda. So I don't know, Karuna, if you've heard me when I said that in my community we call Ananda the Buddhist every person, right? So the Ananda is kind of like us. It's almost like he's the foil, right? He's the one that makes all the mistakes so that we can learn from it. And so you just see that so many times in the suttas. And I think that kind of sincerity and humility is actually why so many people loved Ananda, right? I mean, look at that one section, as we, was it yesterday morning? Yesterday morning. There's a whole section of the Mahaparinibbana Sutta where the Buddha goes off on the praises and the good qualities of Ananda. Right? And one of them is because he's beloved by basically everybody, right? So yeah, he gets some flack. But the way I kind of look at it almost is like, especially if like, sometimes like a group of guys, like guy friends and stuff like that, they'll like really like, knock on each other and, kind of, push each other to keep going and, things like that. And it can seem kind of harsh, but it's really kind of like good natured, right? This is like, even like Mahakassapa was like really kind of, he's kind of like the grumpy old man to the Sangha. He can be a little rough, and he was a bit rough to Ananda, but it was like, come on, let's go. You have to be time to become awakened, time to finish up,
I think it's a great, sorry.
No, go.
I think it's a great point because you're saying he's goading him on to attain enlightenment. And so really it comes from a place, Mahakassapa was already awakened himself, and so it's coming from a place of what's in Ananda's best interest, which is the point of view we're supposed to have when one monastic admonishes another monastic. We're supposed to investigate ourselves first. Well, do I actually have loving kindness in my heart for this person that I'm admonishing? And so when Ananda was admonished at the council by the other Arhat monks, and he was an Arhat himself at that point, I would think that even though it isn't said, that it must have come from that same point of view, that these Arhants with their wisdom, knew that Ananda was already enlightened, but they're admonishing him with the idea of what is going to be helpful for Ananda, and actually probably at that point what would be helpful for Buddhism as well. And so Ananda was very, very intelligent. There's at least one other example where he counter questions the Buddha. I mean, there are many examples of this, but where he counter questions the Buddha to help, ask the Buddha basically to unpack what he's saying and to provide some elaboration. Where when the Buddha in a famous exchange, the Buddha says, he's asked the Buddha, how should we interact with women? And the Buddha says, don't see them. And the Buddha says, well, what if we must see them? And the Buddha says, well, then don't talk to them. And he says, well, what if we must talk to them? And the Buddha says, well, then be mindful. And so Ananda had this ability to look into a question and see what needed to be asked. And so I think the other monks of the Great Council will tell him, basically like keep working on that ability and draw it out and develop it to its fullest. Because he was one of the elder sages of the tradition at this point, and with the Buddha gone, his great intelligence would be needed to help Buddhism continue to grow and to prosper.
So Rick and Julie have a kind of similar question, and it is kind of based off of what you were saying, Tan. And also both Rick and Julie have heard me kind of talk about this topic. So I think this one would be good for them to hear your perspective. So it says, with lay people who don't have access to local teachers or Sangha, how should lay practitioners learn about our progress in our deep meditation experiences? And then Julie says, in addition to Rick's question, how can we determine the attainments of a monk to help guide us as we continue to practice our progress? Can we ask our teacher for a recommendation other ways? So,
Monk.
I mean, you could do it in two questions, but they're basically, it's about like, finding a teacher or
Yes, well, okay. So if you're presupposing that you don't have access, then it's kind of like then I think the crux of it would be about trying to work out how to get access, because in regard to these kinds of things, in deeper meditation states and so on, you really want to have some competent guidance, and so. I have to admit, I'm not. I don't know. I went. So what I did was I went to Thailand and ordained as a Buddhist monk. So it's one thing I can offer. One idea I can offer. And actually, people. So going onto the internet like this, I don't know if there are any people who do. But I imagine that there are some teachers who do very close kind of guidance with students. But I can't say that I know. About kind of deeper meditation states and so on like that. So there are people who go and try to visit teachers and spend a significant amount of time with them in person, which is really the best way. If you could be in person with a competent teacher, or even relocate. Basically move, pack up home and move. I've seen this happen around one monastery, for example, that I can think of, to be in close proximity to a respected teacher. Yeah, so I don't know the second question about, I didn't quite understand about judging the attainments of a monk to help guide us.
Maybe like how do I know that the monk has experienced what I'm experienced to help guide me or something like that?
Right. Okay. But then the next part, can we ask our teacher for a recommendation? Oh, meaning can we ask our teacher for a recommendation of a monk to help guide us to continue our practice? Okay.
So Julie, see if you can clarify that. That might be. Yeah. I almost kind of took it as like, can we ask our teacher, like, have you attained like the second jhana, or like, or can you tell me about the second jhana or something like that? I don't know. Okay. That is a good. Okay.
So maybe some clarification, Julie. What you mean by ask our teacher for a recommendation? Is it a recommendation for a monk to guide you in further meditation? We're not sure. Then How can we determine the attainments of a monk? Well, okay, so maybe if we just talk about that part of the question, I think there's some very good advice in the sutras actually on this point about getting to know a teacher and choosing a teacher. And it's you want to try to get close to the teacher, to spend time with them, so you can assess their character over time. Does this teacher have they reduced their greed, meaning kind of like their desires to such an extent that they will not give you advice out of a hope for some kind of gain for themselves? Have they reduced their aversion to such an extent that they will not give you advice out of disliking for you? That their advice for you will not be given out of some kind of contentment or aversion or disliking, so they won't be biased in that way. And has the teacher reduced their delusion to such an extent that they will not spur you on?
Watch out.
Okay. We suddenly had a rush to stop the cat from unplugging the live stream again, as he did a couple of weeks ago. So sorry. And so onto the third defilement: have they reduced their delusion to such an extent that they will not spur you on to needless activities, needless ways of practicing that don't really yield any benefit? These three kinds, and then you pay close attention to their teachings, so that you can learn their teachings in a methodical way. So, for example, with regard to meditation, you learn the methodology of the teaching in such a way that you can refer to it mentally, and you can contemplate it. Contemplating it, you can see, does it really seem worth trying? And then trying it, you see if you get the results that are promised. If the results that are promised don't materialize, then you can go back to the teacher and ask for some clarification. So it's a step-by-step process, and try again. If you still don't have any luck, then you may want to you have to maybe go back to the teacher and talk some more about this, or you may actually need to find another teacher, I guess. That's one way of trying to determine whether or not the teachings you get from the teacher are really beneficial to you. This process of getting to know the teacher and their teachings and then putting them to the test. And another place in the sutras it says that the guides in coming to understand a teacher would be their teachings and their morality, which I think is very similar. Because morality, you can see someone's kilesas, I think, to a large extent through their actions, through their speech and their actions, and so you can see what their morality is like in this way. This is different from austerities. There's a distinction made in the same sutta that they're judging someone by austerities isn't necessarily worthwhile. Morality is different from austerities. For example, something like eating one meal a day is a standard ascetic practice in Theravada Buddhism, on the standard list. But keeping, not lying, for example, is more of a moral aspect of morality. And so you've got the morality on the one hand as a way to see what kind of kilesas they have and so on, for example. And their teachings, as we kind of talked about in a more detailed and stepwise way of analyzing.
I think it's so important that understanding that the only way that you can really know somebody is by living with them for a long time, and not a short time. So we're not talking about 2 months, right? This is like years and years of living with somebody. And Tan, I think, also kind of got into this a little bit. We take certain signs as meaning that somebody might be something. For instance, like if they speak Dhamma very well, right? Like, or they sound so profound, and you think, oh, they really must know what they're doing. And then, you're a fellow monk, and you kind of see how they act when they're not in front of lay people giving a Dhamma talk, and you're like, oh, wait a second. you can't just like take these, or they have perfect robes and everything looks so dignified and so wonderful, and these can be signs, but they don't necessarily are. So this, and you can see this in the Kalama Sutta, the Kesaputiya Sutta, right, where the Buddha says, don't go just by because the teacher is a good orator, or they said so, or whatever. You do have to question. And the Buddha actually is wonderful in this. The Buddha most monastics don't know this, let alone people, but when you become a monastic, you can choose who you want to live under. You don't have to just live under the person who ordains you. The person who ordains you could end up being really bad and you just want to not live under them. You can, as a junior monastic, 1 day old monastic, you can choose who you want to live under. Right? The Buddha gave that. Buddha understood. And the Buddha actually gave a junior monastic the ability to vet a senior monastic, to like kind of test them for like a week or two. Should I be under this monastic? Right? Because you do have to investigate. You do have to kind of question these things. And, you know, in the end, right, what does it say at the end of the Parinibbana Sutta? You know, be as yourself as an island, right? As the Dhamma as your only refuge, as yourself as a refuge. In the end, you know, you might be luck out and you might find a great teacher, or you might not. So in the end, though, you are your own refuge. And you know, it'll really, your karma is your own. So in the end, it comes down to you, I would say. But, and Amy, or not Amy, yeah, Julie never clarified. So this is good. On Tan's very last Ask Abante, at least for now, he's getting lots of questions. So that's good. Because this is there a form of meditation in the Thai forest tradition that you all practice, such as in Soto Zen, Zazen, that you would also recommend to lay people, except Anapanasati?
Except Anapanasati, okay.
I don't even know what all practice. This is why this is great for you, Tom.
Interesting, okay. Well, because
The Thai
Anapanasati
tradition.
is such a common one of the Thai forest tradition. It's an interesting writer on the question. Yes, actually in Thailand in general, the breath meditation is considered the crown meditation object. They say the crown meditation object because it is because it's the meditation object the Buddha was practicing when he attained enlightenment, according to the suttas, and also because it's the one kamatana or basis meditation object that's suitable for all personality types.
So just sorry,
Okay.
he actually, there's two other things. So by that I mean a practice that I can practice and deepen daily. Open custody, animata. So I think I guess he's trying to find a practice, like when he says all, it's like kind of like the zazen, like you're not focusing on any one thing. Is there such a practice in open awareness? I mean,
I see.
Sorry for my
Animata,
English.
without a sign. Interesting. Actually, that would be kind of antithetical to the Thai forest tradition. I think the lineage of Ajahn Mun. They placed a strong emphasis on having a specific meditation theme or an object to focus the mind on. Consider it critical, really, to the meditation meditation practice in the beginning to make the mind calm and get it solid and gathered together around this one meditation theme. Once the mind is well consolidated and you really have good samadhi that you can maintain, then the object itself doesn't matter so much, except like witnessing impermanence, for example. This would be the perception of impermanence, where it doesn't matter whether it's a visible object or which visible object it is, for example, or what sound it is, for example, or whatever kind of sense experience you're having. What you really are noticing is the impermanence. But first you have to have the specific meditation theme to help you develop the calm of mind and the samadhi. So I'd say that. If you already have that, then yes, then you can go to the perception of impermanence, and that'd be very beneficial. So, another one in the Thai forest tradition that they practice quite a lot. Is but it is kind of a specific theme. It would be once you have samadhi, focusing on the body in its impermanent characteristics and its repulsiveness, to help the mind become disenchanted with the body. So, for example, noticing the four elements, which are actually more kind of, I think, related to anatta, or essenceless, lack of essence in the body, kind of thing. But also the corpse contemplations, or the 32 parts of the body contemplations related to those. Those are definitely specific themes.
Yeah, I think the like in terms of like early text, like the only thing that would kind of maybe come close to some kind of zazen practice is like if you're doing straight satipatthana, because you are kind of in many ways investigating what is arising. But other than that, yeah, I would say even in Theravada, there's not a lot of equivalent to that. Even in like, the Sri Lankan tradition or the Sutta tradition that I know of, it's basically kind of like the same as what Tom was saying with Thai forest. So Rick has a contemplation for us. Can you share some reflections about the difference between people living their own spiritual ideals versus controlling others to live up to those ideals? Thank you. I think that we all kind of go through a little bit of this as like when we're new into a spiritual practice. We kind of like, it's like, I know I've gone through this, and many Western converts that I've spoken to kind of go through this like beginning part of like, this is the most amazing thing ever. We have to make sure that everybody knows all about it. I watched a video years ago. This comedy group or whatever did a thing like the annoying Vipassana guy. And it was like a person who comes back from a Vipassana retreat and has to tell everybody. And it's just like, it's pretty funny. So you kind of have this kind of, and you see it as like, in a way, it kind of comes from a good intention in some ways, but as you get more wise, you really start to see how actually you just have to let people be on their own path and you focus on your own path. Even when it comes to like a lot of Christians, like if they're really kind of an honest, sincere person and they really are afraid that you might go to hell, I mean, that's kind of a compliment. Like they like you enough that they want you to, they don't want you to go to hell. I mean, that's a a nice thing. And obviously if they start to, force and control you, that's not a good thing. But, a lot of times there might be a positive intention behind it, because we can have all kinds of positive intentions and do all kinds of horrible things because of those positive intentions. So I think the wiser a person gets on their path, the more they focus on their own path and they let people on their own path. And if they those people have questions or ask for some help, then you'll help. But this is a good reason why the Buddha made it so that we have to be asked to give Dhamma talks and things like that. We can't force our stuff on other people as monastics, which is good. Tom?
Oh no, Sadhu, that's great.
Oh, okay.
Maybe Josh has a question also.
I have a somewhat complicated question about sila and copyright, which is I've spent a lot of time thinking about whether it's a violation of the precepts to illegally download something, and then whether watching something that someone has illegally downloaded, or using my parents' Netflix account, which they're not supposed to share it with someone who doesn't live with them. And so it gets into this very strange territory of what does it mean to take what is not given.
Right. Please, Mother.
Oh, yeah. Well, so this is an interesting thing. So for me personally, it's breaking the precept. And I went through a kind of personal journey on this, because I was, I know what Pirate Bay is, and I've used it very well in the past. I've downloaded things, and when I used to, as a layperson, when I was on Netflix before it was even streaming, and you'd get the DVDs in the mail, and I'd burn it. I even put my own logo on all the burning things and things like that. So I did all of that kind of stuff. But as I was kind of like going through the path, I started to realize, actually, this doesn't feel right. I was really kind of paying attention to my intuition and my wisdom as I was going through the practice. And interestingly enough, around the same time, two very well-known monastics came out with articles basically saying that it's not against the precepts. That's Bhante Sujato and Bhante Yuttadhammo. You can Google it. You can look at and I read their articles, and also I became a photographer, so I had a photography business. So I really got into understanding more about copyright and things like that. And for me personally, I didn't buy their arguments. And so like there's a point where I gave up doing any kind of burning, any kind of things like that. The sharing of an account is a little, it's interesting. I think there's a bit of a different valence there, especially if it's a family member, because it's like if you rented a movie, they can come over, you can go over to their house and watch the movie with them. It's a bit more, I think, gray than, I'm downloading something that I'm not paying for, or I'm going to burn a DVD. I mean, who does DVDs anymore anyway? I mean, I don't know. I've been almost 10 years out of the world. So, but I think that it's all digital and streaming these days. But yeah, that's what I would say about it. And this is an example to me of how the precepts are almost never, living the precepts is almost never black and white. Like, yeah, it's black and white. Yeah, don't kill people. That's an obvious black and white one. But then you get into a situation where you have a family and your house is infested with bed bugs. And what do you have to do, right? And then it turns into lots and lots of shades of gray. And so this is a shade of gray that I would, I hear people's perspectives on it, and really kind of, in the end, it's your choice to decide, what, I'm going to do this or I'm not. So for me, in my own progression, there was a time where I just said, and I, even though I highly respect these other monastics and their arguments, I personally stopped doing any kind of, downloading and copyright stuff like that.
Everyone's happy. That's good.
Sud has a question. Dear Bhante, what does it mean to have sati sampajanya? I can get this one.
Great.
Okay. So sati and sampajanya are often in the suttas a compound. And one of the things that I think is clear in the suttas is that when we use the word mindfulness, actually there's a bunch of words in the suttas that encapsulate what we think of as mindfulness. So sati, if you just take that word by itself, sati has two kind of contexts. One is recollecting. The Buddha says this, a person recollects what they have learned, what they have heard. So this ability to recall what you've learned. The other aspect of it is being mindful, right? Being present and aware. Sampajanya is also being clearly comprehending all your activities. As long as you're awake, whatever you're doing, right? And the Buddha gives a whole list: bending and stretching, walking, lying down, sitting, going here to there, eating, going to the bathroom. This is why I always joke, next time you go to the bathroom, don't take your phone, have clear comprehension of what's happening in the bathroom. Or when you're eating, right? All kinds of things. So the Buddha wants us to clearly understand sampajanya, this clear comprehension. This is not like, oh yeah, I know the sun comes up. This is like pajanati. This is another important word that you see in the Satipatthana. Pajanati is to know experientially and deeply. So when you have sampajanya, you are clearly experientially, deeply understanding what is happening, right? What you are doing. And so when you have this sati sampajanya, you have complete, maybe not fully complete mindfulness, but mostly complete mindfulness. Then you have to get in Yoniso Manasikara. There's a couple other things that kind of all come into this. But Sati Sampajanya is very, very important to practice, and it's part of Satipatthana Sutta. Four foundations of mindfulness. You can see this under the section on body. You can see Sampajanya, and you can practice in such a way. Is parinibbana equated with death as people with materialistic worldviews see it? Black, nothing, forever. Like total blackness, materialistic. Oh, okay. That's good. I'll take some. Give you a break. You've been talking a lot. So when we're talking about a being who's extinguished, there's no way to conceptually understand what this is. This is literally beyond conceptions. So I'll give you an example. So the Buddha says that nibbana, the state of nibbana is there's no coming, no going, no stasis. So you're not going, you're not moving, but you're not standing still. There's no sun, no moon, no darkness. So there's no light, but there's no darkness. When you see this, you kind of get the understanding of, okay, well, this doesn't compute in the normal, mundane, conceptual understanding of things. Because when there's light, there's a reason for the light, right? There's a sun, there's a moon, etc. So we cannot really fully understand what it is to be fully extinguished because we are not fully extinguished. We cannot say, because the Buddha would never ever, so there's the two extremes that the Buddha always tried to not agree with. The first two are the eternalists, meaning that the people who believe that you have this permanent soul that existed forever and ever. And the other were the annihilationists, who are the materialists, who believe that after death, nothing. Right? So the Buddha did not agree with both of those. The Buddha says, I teach by the middle. And that middle was often the dependent origination. So no, I would not equate anything in terms of parinibbana with materialistic worldview.
I wonder if I could ask a little something. As I recall, nibbana in the suttas is described as being peace or peaceful. And it's also said in the suttas that peace is the highest pleasure. And so I think that's even though we don't really understand what is there or what it is, but at least there's this aspect of it, that it is the cessation of suffering. There's no suffering, and actually it's the highest pleasure. Does this sound fair based on the sutras? Okay.
We are coming. We only have about 10 minutes left, and we're getting a rash of questions. So, Amaranta.
Sorry, we had some. I didn't realize there was one question here. So maybe after this one, Amaranta. Sorry.
Venables, what do you recommend when people around are talking gossip constantly and you can't avoid some conversation? I just go away, but sometimes this can be rude.
I think be mindful. This is quite necessary that in life we'll find ourselves in these kinds of circumstances and many other kinds of circumstances that don't seem conducive. But if we can use our mindfulness, then we can turn an unconducive situation to spiritual growth into one where we can grow spiritually. So I think it's quite, really give a simple answer like that.
Yeah, when I was in my office and I would get stuck into a group that was, gossiping, I would try to tactfully get away when I could. And if I couldn't, I would be mindful. I'd just be watching myself and my reaction to what other people were saying and being quiet. And then if I was going to speak, it was going to be in a way that was going to lead the conversation to a better way or to end the conversation, one or the other.
wonder if we could call Amy now.
All right.
If there's a lot of questions, it's okay because people haven't seen it.
It's up to you. I don't really know how many we have, but do we have a lot of questions? It looks like
Like 3
Three.
in 10 minutes.
3 and 10 minutes. We could do between 3 and 4 in 10 minutes. Really.
Yeah.
So Bhante Sudasan does the speed answers.
Well, what's your question?
Oh, mine
Let's
is,
go for it.
is that where the tetralemma comes in? With like Nirvana?
What does tetralemma mean?
No
Okay.
idea.
What do you mean?
Oh.
What is it? I don't know that word.
Is like after the Buddha died, is he exist? Does he not exist?
Oh,
Does he
yeah.
neither both exist and not exist? Does he neither exist and not exist?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. That's right. It's one of those kinds of questions. Yeah.
They're unanswerable, and if he answered one or the other, he would be agreeing with one or the other. So
Right,
yeah,
right.
you know. So yeah.
He says in one sutta to Vajragota, he says, the Tathagata is deep and profound, and so he talks like this. Yeah, so you can't really understand what it's like for him after he passes away. So, but it's really good. It's really awesome. See, you want to do it too.
So Rick asks us if to share any meaningful events that guided your journey as a monk.
Well, we've been. I think between us, we've been monks for about like 15 years, or somewhere between 15 and 20 years, probably, right at this point. So it's been quite a few experiences. Gosh, one of those like I need to narrow it down to one or a few. Well, one is very. I don't know if this is really helpful kind of thing to relate, but when I received my kammatthana from my meditation teacher, from my teacher, and one of the things I learned about it over time is that when you receive a meditation object from a teacher, it isn't like it's some kind of a magic wand, but rather that it's. I kind of like it now more to being like a Rubik's cube, and so it gives you the Rubik's cube, or she gives you the Rubik's cube, and then you work with the teacher to learn how to solve the Rubik's cube over time. They give you hints so that you learn and grow as you learn to work out this Rubik's cube. That's one thing. Yeah.
Nothing comes to mind really for me. Meaningful events that guided your journey as a monk. So this is as a monk, as you're a monk already.
I just thought of one that happened before I ordained as a monk, but still I think it's fairly relevant. And so, let me just go ahead and say it. I received the advice about where to ordain, or what teacher to ordain under. And the advice I got from a very senior monastic was, one quality that the teacher should have is that he should not pander or allow your likes and dislikes. So he won't let you do whatever you want to do, kind of thing, and let you not do the things you don't want to do. Instead, he'll keep pushing you on the path in the right way and trying to get you to do things that are truly beneficial for you, whether you like them or not.
It sounds like Ajahn Chah. I like it. Yeah, I guess I don't know. For me, I guess what's guiding my journey as a monk, I think the last couple of years of being a nomad and visiting lots of different places and kind of seeing how other monastics live has been very beneficial, and to kind of help me understand this monastic life in a more broad way.
I remember once meeting a very senior teacher. He was 80 years old, and he was a Buddhist monk, and he was just agape with happiness. He was smiling so broadly, his mouth was open. It was like agape with so much happiness, and his loving kindness was like extremely powerful, which is a dramatic understatement. And one of the questions I asked him, I had a chance to ask questions, was, how should we practice the code of conduct? That's the Vinaya for monks. He says, you don't practice Vinaya. He says, you know what it is, you learn what it is, and you follow it. I thought that was a more kind of black and white and direct answer than I expected, but I really respected it. And I asked him, is the code of conduct for monks a conventional reality or is it an ultimate reality? And he says, well, it's a conventional reality. He says, but it's not a conventional reality like other conventional realities, because it's a conventional reality of the Buddha. And I didn't have, for some reason, I didn't have an opportunity to question a little bit more about that. But the way I understood it was that because the Buddha had such astute understanding of the laws of cause and effect, which was he had this level of wisdom about cause and effect that stood above anyone else in the world, that and the workings of karma, for example, and so on like this, that when he gave us rules, it was because he really knew what was good for the long-term benefit of us.
Greg has a question about, do we find the study of other wisdom traditions like the Tao Te Ching to help or hinder progress on the path? For me, this was something that I studied before I went deep into Buddhism. Like I've studied most of the world religions, even things like Wicca and paganism and things like that. But once I found my path, that's my path. Like I spend almost no time in this existence studying any other religion or tradition. I don't even spend time studying other Buddhist traditions, right? Because I found my path, my niche, and that's what I focus on. You only have so much time in one life. This is why I say like the early texts are 5,000 pages, and that's more than enough for one person to try to master in one life. So I don't really go trying to think about other traditions and or other religions at this point. I did all of that work beforehand, but now I don't.
I'm very much the same way, actually. Interesting. The same kind of personality, I think, in that regard. Yeah. Generally speaking.
So Julie, I guess, is having some clarification about that question. And can we ask our teacher for a recommendation of another monastic since he knows me, or is it up to us to seek one out? I trust my teacher's judgment. It's just that he is not answering my question about specific paranormal experiences that I wish to understand.
If you trust your teacher, sure. And any recommendation for another teacher, you go into it with thinking that there's a good possibility, if you have to trust this person's judgment to guide you in seeking another teacher. And you also use your own judgment, of course. So, but it sounds like a really good place to start, I think, actually. A recommendation from a teacher you trust already.
All right. Well, we have 2 minutes left. We have no questions. I think it's a good time to end.
Good, yeah, sure.
Are there any dying quick questions from people here that might have a? No, you could also ask us these later too, or tomorrow. So, all right, I think we're good, Tom.
Wonderful, sadhu. So yes, wrapping up our monk chat for tonight. Tomorrow evening we have a public Dhamma program at Empty Cloud Monastery with guided meditation, and Dhamma talk, and a question and answer. If people have questions, Bhante J will be leading that here at Empty Cloud Monastery. So welcome. We invite you. And on Sunday, a long Dhamma program with Aya Suwijana, a Terry Bhikkhuni, here at Empty Cloud Monastery from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. I'd like to say on a personal note, I'd like to say goodbye. I am leaving at 5:30 a.m. tomorrow morning from Empty Cloud Monastery. So it's been a nice, very, very nice 3 months here. It's been a real pleasure to be with the community here. And so thank you all for making this a wonderful stay. I'm certainly going to miss Empty Cloud Monastery. And so best wishes to you all for prospering in the Dhamma and Anumodana your continued practice.
Safe travels, Tom. And good night, everybody.